Shiva, also known as Mahadeva, is a popular Hindu deity. Shiva is regarded as one of the primary forms of God. He is the supreme god within Shaivism, one of the three most influential denominations in contemporary Hinduism. He is one of the five primary forms of God in the Smarta tradition, and the destroyer, or the transformer among the Trimurti, the Hindu Trinity of the primary aspects of the divine. Shiva has many benevolent and fearsome forms. At the highest level, Shiva is limitless, transcendent, unchanging and formless. In benevolent aspects, he is depicted as an omniscient yogi who lives an ascetic life on Mount Kailash, as well as a householder with wife Parvati and his two children, Ganesha and Kartikeya, and in fierce aspects, he is often depicted slaying demons. Shiva is also regarded as the patron god of yoga and arts. The main iconographical attributes of Shiva are the third eye on his forehead, the snake Vasuki around his neck, the crescent moon adorning, the holy river Ganga flowing from his matted hair, the Trishula as his weapon and the Damara as his instrument. Shiva is usually worshipped in the aniconic form of lingam. Temples to Lord Shiva are called Shivalayam. Etymology and other names. The Sanskrit word Shiva comes from Sri Rudram Shamakam of Tavitya Samhita of Krishna Yajurveda. The root word angstrami means auspicious. In simple English transliteration it is written either as Shiva or Shiva. The adjective angstramiva is used as an attributive epithet not particularly of Rudra, but of several other Vedic deities. The other popular names associated with Shiva are Mahadeva, Mahesh, Maheshwar, Shankar, Shamu, Rudra, Ha, Trilochan, Devendra and Trilokinath. The Sanskrit word angstrameva means relating to the god Shiva, and this term is the Sanskrit name both for one of the principal sects of Hinduism and for a member of that sect. It is used as an adjective to characterize certain beliefs and practices, such as Shaivism. He is the oldest worshipped lord of India. The Tamil word Sivan, Tamil, a registered trademark Shaiva could have been derived from the word Sivapu. The word Sivapu means red in Tamil language, but while addressing a person's skin texture in Tamil the word Sivapu is used for being fair-skinned. Adi Sankara, in his interpretation of the name Shiva, the 27th and 600th name of Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Vishnu interprets Shiva to have multiple meanings, the pure one, or the one who is not affected by three gunas of prakriti, or the one who purifies everyone by the very utterance of his name. Swami Chinmayananda, in his translation of Vishnu Sahasranama, further elaborates on that verse. Shiva means the one who is eternally pure, or the one who can never have any contamination of the imperfection of rajas and tamas. Shiva's role as the primary deity of Shaivism is reflected in his epithets Mahadeva, Mahayavra, and Paramyavra. There are at least 8 different versions of the Shiva Sahasranama, devotional hymns listing many names of Shiva. The version appearing in Book 13 of the Mahabharata is considered the kernel of this tradition. Shiva also has Dasha Sahasranamas that are found in the Mahanasur. The Sri Rudram Shamakam, also known as the Shatardriya, is a devotional hymn to Shiva hailing him by many names. Historical development and literature. The worship of Shiva is a pan-Hindu tradition, practiced widely across all of India, Nepal and Sri Lanka. Assimilation of traditions. A figure of Shiva as we know him today was built up over time, with the ideas of many regional sects being amalgamated into a single figure. How the persona of Shiva converged as a composite deity is not well documented. According to Vijayanath, Vishnu and Shiva began to absorb countless local cults and deities within their folds. The latter were either taken to represent the multiple facets of the same god or else were supposed to denote different forms and appellations by which the god came to be known and worshipped. Shiva became identified with countless local cults by the sheer suffixing of Isa or Isvara to the name of the local deity, for example, Bhutasvara, Hartakesvara, Chainsvara. Axel Michaels the Indologist suggests that Shaivism, like Vaishnavism, implies a unity which cannot be clearly found either in religious practice or in philosophical and esoteric doctrine. Furthermore, practice and doctrine must be kept separate. An example of assimilation took place in Maharashtra, where a regional deity named Khandoba is a patron deity of farming and herding castes. The foremost center of worship of Khandoba in Maharashtra is in Jejuri. Khandoba has been assimilated as a form of Shiva himself, in which case he is worshipped in the form of a lingam. Khandoba's varied associations also include an identification with Śiva and Kartikeya. Indus Valley origins. Many Indus Valley seals show animals, but one seal that has attracted attention shows a figure either horned or wearing a horned headdress and possibly a thiphalic figure seated in a posture reminiscent of the lotus position and surrounded by animals was named by early excavators of Mohenjo-Daro Pashupati, an epithet of the later Hindu gods Shiva and Rudra. Sir John Marshall and others have claimed that this figure is a prototype of Shiva and have described the figure as having three faces seated in a yoga posture with the knees out and feet joined. This claim has been criticized, with some academics like Gavin Flood and John Kerr characterizing them as unfounded. Writing in 1997, Doris Srinivasan said that not too many recent studies continue to call the seal's figure a proto-Shiva, rejecting thereby Marshall's package of proto-Shiva features, including that of three heads. She interprets what John Marshall interpreted as facial as not human but more bovine, possibly a divine buffalo man. According to Iravathur Mahadeva symbols 47 and 48 of his Indus script glossary, the Indus script, texts, concordance and tables, representing seated human-like figures, could describe Hindu deity Murugan, popularly known as Shiva and Parvati's son. Indo-European origins. Shiva's rise to a major position in the pantheon was facilitated by his identification with a host of Vedic deities, including Purusha, Rudra, Agni, Indra, Prajapati, Vayu, and others. Rudra. Shiva as we know him today shares many features with the Vedic god Rudra, and both Shiva and Rudra are viewed as the same personality in Hindu scriptures. The two names are used synonymously. Rudra, the god of the roaring storm, is usually portrayed in accordance with the element he represents as a fierce, destructive deity. The oldest surviving text of Hinduism is the Rig Veda, which is dated to between 1700 and 1100 BCE based on linguistic and philological evidence. A god named Rudra is mentioned in the Rig Veda. The name Rudra is still used as a name for Shiva. In RV 2.33, he is described as the father of the Rudras, a group of storm gods. Furthermore, the Rudram, one of the most sacred hymns of Hinduism found both in the Rig and the Yajurvedas and addressed to Rudra, invokes him as Shiva in several instances, but the term Shiva is used as an epithet for the gods Indra, Mitra and Agni many times. Since Shiva means pure, the epithet is possibly used to describe a quality of these gods rather than to identify any of them with the god Shiva. The identification of Shiva with the older god Rudra is not universally accepted, as Axel Michaels explains. Rudra is called the archer, and the arrow is an essential attribute of Rudra. This name appears in the Shiva Sahasranama, and R.K. Sharma notes that it is used as a name of Shiva often in later languages. The word is derived from the Sanskrit root angstramav, which means to injure, or to kill, and Sharma uses that general sense in his interpretive translation of the name Sharva as one who can kill the forces of darkness. The names Danvin and Bharata the first master also refer to archery. Agni, Rudra and Agni have a close relationship. The identification between Agni and Rudra in the Vedic literature was an important factor in the process of Rudra's gradual development into the later character as Rudra Shiva. The identification of Agni with Rudra is explicitly noted in the Nyarakta, an important early text on etymology, which says, Agni is also called Rudra. The interconnections between the two deities are complex, and according to Stella Krimrish, the fire myth of Rudra Shiva plays on the whole gamut of fire, valuing all its potentialities and phases, from conflagration to illumination. In the Shatarudraya, some epithets of Rudra, such as Sasipa plus or minus Jara and Tavor to the first Dharmati, suggest a fusing of the two deities. Agni is said to be a bull, and Lord Shiva possesses a bull as his vehicle, Nandi. The horns of Agni, who is sometimes characterized as a bull, are mentioned. In medieval sculpture, both Agni and the form of Shiva known as Bhairava have flaming hair as a special feature. Indra, according to a theory, the Puranic Shiva is a continuation of the Vedic Indra. He gives several reasons for his hypothesis. Both are associated with mountains, rivers, male fertility, fierceness, fearlessness, warfare, transgression of established mores, the Om sound, the Supreme Self. In the Rig Veda the term Angstramiva is used to refer to Indra. Indra, like Shiva, is likened to a bull. In the Rig Veda, Rudra is the father of the Maruts, but he is never associated with their warlike exploits as is Indra. The Vedic beliefs and practices of the pre-classical era were closely related to the hypothesized Proto-Indo-European religion, and the Indo-Iranian religion. According to Antony, the Old Indic religion probably emerged among Indo-European immigrants in the contact zone between the Zarafshan River and Iran. It was a syncretic mixture of Old Central Asian and New Indo-European elements, which borrowed distinctive religious beliefs and practices from the Bactria-Euro-Margiana culture. At least 383 non-Indo-European words were borrowed from this culture, including the god Indra and the ritual drink Soma. According to Antony, many of the qualities of Indo-Iranian god of might victory, Verithrana, were transferred to the adopted god Indra, who became the central deity of the developing Old Indic culture. Indra was the subject of 250 hymns, a quarter of the Rig Veda. He was associated more than any other deity with Soma, a stimulant drug probably borrowed from the Bhimasi religion. His rise to prominence was a peculiar trait of the Old Indic speakers. Later Vedic literature, Rudra's transformation from an ambiguously characterized deity to a supreme being began in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which founded the tradition of Rudra Shiva worship. Here they are identified as the creators of the cosmos and liberators of souls from the birth-rebirth cycle. The period of 200 BCE to 100 CE also marks the beginning of the Shaiva tradition focused on the worship of Shiva, with references to Shaiva ascetics in Patanjali's Mahabhasya and in the Mahabharata. Early historical paintings at the Bhimaka rock shelters depict Shiva dancing, Shiva's trident, and his Mount Nandi but no other Vedic gods. Puranic literature, the Shiva Puranas, particularly the Shiva Purana and the Linga Purana, discuss the various forms of Shiva and the cosmology associated with him. Tantric literature, the Tantras, composed between the 8th and 11th centuries, regard themselves as Shruti. Among these the Shaiva-agamas, are said to have been revealed by Shiva himself and are foundational texts for Shaiva Siddhanta. Position within Hinduism. Shaivism. Shaivism is the oldest of the four major sects of Hinduism, the others being Vaishnavism, Shaktism and Smartism. Followers of Shaivism, called Shaivas, and also Savas, or Saivites, revere Shiva as the supreme being. Shaivas believe that Shiva is all and in all, the creator, preserver, destroyer, revealer and concealer of all that is. The Tantric Shaiva tradition consists of the Kapalikas, Kashmir Shaivism and Shaiva Siddhanta. The Shiva Mahapurana is one of the Purata the first is, a genre of Hindu religious texts, dedicated to Shiva. Shaivism is widespread throughout India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, mostly. Areas notable for the practice of Shaivism include parts of Southeast Asia, especially Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Pankayatana Puja. Pankayatana Puja is the system of worship in the Smarta Sampradaya of Hinduism. It is said to have been introduced by Adi Shankara, the 8th century CE Hindu philosopher. It consists of the worship of 5 deities, Shiva, Vishnu, Devi, Surya and Ganesha. Depending on the tradition followed by Smarta households, one of these deities is kept in the center and the other 4 surround it. Worship is offered to all the deities. The 5 are represented by small murtis, or by 5 kinds of stones, or by 5 marks drawn on the floor. Trimurti. The Trimurti is a concept in Hinduism in which the cosmic functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction are personified by the forms of Brahma the creator, Vishnu the maintainer or preserver and Shiva the destroyer or transformer. These 3 deities have been called the Hindu Triad, or the Great Trinity, often addressed as Brahma Vishnu Maheshwara. Iconography and properties, attributes. Shiva's form. Shiva has a trident in the right lower arm, and a crescent moon on his head. He is said to be fair like camphor or like an ice-clad mountain. He wears 5 serpents and a garland of skulls as ornaments. Shiva is usually depicted facing the south. His trident, like almost all other forms in Hinduism, can be understood as the symbolism of the unity of 3 worlds that are human faces, his inside world, his immediate world, and the broader overall world. At the base of the trident, all 3 forks unite. Third eye. Shiva is often depicted with a third eye, with which he burned desire to ashes, called Tyambakam, Tamala a registered trademark AA, which occurs in many scriptural sources. In classical Sanskrit, the word ambaka denotes an eye, and in the Mahabharata, Shiva is depicted as 3-eyed, so this name is sometimes translated as having 3 eyes. However, in Vedic Sanskrit, the word Amba or Ambika means mother, and this early meaning of the word is the basis for the translation 3 mothers. These 3 mother goddesses who are collectively called the Ambikas. Other related translations have been based on the idea that the name actually refers to the oblations given to Rudra, which according to some traditions were shared with the goddess Ambika. It has been mentioned that when Shiva loses his temper, his third eye opens, which can destroy most things to ashes. Crescent moon. Shiva bears on his head the crescent moon. The epithet Candrakara refers to this feature. The placement of the moon on his head as a standard iconographic feature dates to the period when Rudra rose to prominence and became the major deity Rudra Shiva. The origin of this linkage may be due to the identification of the moon with Soma, and there is a hymn in the Rig Veda where Soma and Rudra are jointly implored, and in later literature, Soma and Rudra came to be identified with one another, as were Soma and the moon. The crescent moon is shown on the side of the Lord's head as an ornament. The waxing and waning phenomenon of the moon symbolizes the time cycle through which creation evolves from the beginning to the end. Ashes. Shiva smears his body with ashes. The ashes are said to represent the end of all material existence. Some forms of Shiva, such as Bhairava, are associated with a very old Indian tradition of cremation ground asceticism that was practiced by some groups who were outside the fold of Brahmanic orthodoxy. These practices associated with cremation grounds are also mentioned in the Pali Canon of Theravada Buddhism. One epithet for Shiva is inhabitant of the cremation ground, referring to this connection. It is interesting to see the peaceful acceptance of cremation ground temples of Batuk Bhairava, a form of Lord Shiva, by the general populace. Matted hair. Shiva's distinctive hairstyle is noted in the epithets jaw to the first in, the one with matted hair, and Kapadin, endowed with matted hair, or wearing his hair wound in a braid in a shell-like fashion. A kapada is a cowrie shell, or a braid of hair in the form of a shell, or, more generally, hair that is shaggy or curly. His hair is said to be like molten gold in color or being yellowish-white. Blue throat. The epithet Nalakar to the first Thar. Tamil, a registered trademark a registered trademark UA. Neelakandan, since Shiva drank the halahala poison churned up from the Samudra mainland to eliminate its destructive capacity. Shocked by his act, goddess Parvati strangled his neck and hence managed to stop it in his neck itself and prevent it from spreading all over the universe, supposed to be in Shiva's stomach. However, the poison was so potent that it changed the color of his neck to blue. Sacred Ganges, bearer of Ganga. Ganges River flows from the matted hair of Shiva. The Gaur to the first Gar, one of the major rivers of the country, is said to have made her abode in Shiva's hair. The flow of the Ganges also represents the nectar of immortality. Tiger skin. He is often shown seated upon a tiger skin, an honor reserved for the most accomplished of Hindu ascetics, the Brahmarishis. Serpents. Shiva is often shown garlanded with a snake. Deer. His holding deer on one hand indicates that he has removed the chankalata of the mind. A deer jumps from one place to another swiftly, similar to the mind moving from one thought to another. Trident. Shiva's particular weapon is the trident. His tristle that is held in his right hand represents the 3 Ganasa Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. That is the emblem of sovereignty. He rules the world through these three gunas. The Dhamara in his left hand represents the Sabda Brahman. It represents Om, from which all languages are formed. It is he who formed the Sanskrit language out of the Dhamara sound. Drum, a small drum shaped like an hourglass, is known as a Dhamara. This is one of the attributes of Shiva in his famous dancing representation known as Nataraja. A specific hand gesture called an amarahasta is used to hold the drum. This drum is particularly used as an emblem by members of the Karpalika sect. Axe, the Parashu, is the weapon of Lord Shiva, who gave it to Parashurama, sixth avatar of Vishnu, whose name means Rama with the axe, and also taught him its mastery. Nanda, also known as Nandan, is the name of the bull that serves as Shiva's mount. Shiva's association with cattle is reflected in his name Payupati, or Pashupati, translated by Sharma as Lord of Cattle, and by Krimesh as Lord of Animals, who notes that it is particularly used as an epithet of Rudra. Rishabha, or the bull, represents Dharma Devata. Lord Shiva rides on the bull. Bull is his vehicle. This denotes that Lord Shiva is the protector of Dharma, is an embodiment of Dharma or righteousness. Gaur to the first the Gaur to the first is our attendants of Shiva and live in Kailash. They are often referred to as the Bhutaganas, or ghostly hosts, on account of their nature. Generally benign, except when their lord is transgressed against, they are often invoked to intercede with the Lord on behalf of the devotee. Ganesha was chosen as their leader by Shiva, hence Ganesha's title Gaur to the first Aaa or Gaur to the first Apati, Lord of the Gaur to the first as. Mount Kailash. Mount Kailash in the Himalayas is his traditional abode. In Hindu mythology, Mount Kailash is conceived as resembling a linga, representing the center of the universe. Varanasi is considered to be the city specially loved by Shiva, and is one of the holiest places of pilgrimage in India. It is referred to, in religious contexts, as Kashi. Lingam. Apart from anthropomorphic images of Shiva, the worship of Shiva in the form of a lingam, or linga, is also important. These are depicted in various forms. One common form is the shape of a vertical rounded column. Shiva means auspiciousness, and linga means a sign or a symbol. Hence, the Shiva linga is regarded as a symbol of the great God of the universe who is all auspiciousness. Shiva also means one in whom the whole creation sleeps after dissolution. Linga also means the same thing, a place where created objects get dissolved during the disintegration of the created universe. Since, according to Hinduism, it is the same God that creates, sustains and withdraws the universe, the Shiva linga represents symbolically God himself. Some scholars, such as Monia Williams and Wendy Doniger, also view linga as a phallic symbol, although this interpretation is disputed by others, including Christopher Isherwood, Vivekananda, Swami Shivananda, and S. N. Balaganadhara. Jyotirlinga. The worship of Shiva or Rudra can be dated back to the primitive worship of the Almighty. The people in this period used to worship the natural forces and represented the Almighty in the stones. The linga worship could be a primitive form of idol worship. Gradually the culture may have been assimilated to the ancient Aryan Dravidian culture and thereby to the Sanskrit literature. The worship of the Shiva linga originated from the famous hymn in the Atharva Veda Samhita sung in praise of the Upastama, the sacrificial post. In that hymn, a description is found of the beginningless and endless stama or skama, and it is shown that the said skama is put in place of the eternal Brahman. Just as the Yaja fire, its smoke, ashes, and flames, the soma plant, and the ox that used to carry on its back the wood for the Vedic sacrifice gave place to the conceptions of the brightness of Shiva's body, his tawny matted hair, his blue throat, and the riding on the bull of the Shiva, the Upaskama gave place in time to the Shiva linga. In the text Linga Purana, the same hymn is expanded in the shape of stories, meant to establish the glory of the great Stama and the superiority of Shiva as Mahadeva. The sacred of all Shiva linga is worshipped as Yalinga. Jyoti means radiance. Apart from relating Shiva linga as a phallus symbol, there are also arguments that Shiva linga means mark or a sign. the way of worship of primitive men by representing the Almighty on a stone. Jyotirlinga means the radiant sign of the Almighty. The Jyotirlingas are mentioned in Shiva Purana. Shakti. Shiva forms a tantric couple with Shakti, Tamala a registered trademark, Shah registered trademark, AAA, the embodiment of energy, dynamism, and the motivating force behind all action and existence in the material universe. Shiva is her transcendent masculine aspect, providing the divine ground of all being. Shakti manifests in several female deities. Sati and Parvati are the main consorts of Shiva. She is also referred to as Uma, Durga, Kali and Chandika. Kali is the manifestation of Shakti in her dreadful aspect. The name Kali comes from Kala, which means black, time, death, lord of death, Shiva. Since Shiva is called Kala, the eternal time, Kala, his consort, also means time, or death. Various Shakta Hindu cosmologies, as well as Shakta tantric beliefs, worship her as the ultimate reality or Brahman. She is also revered as Bhavatarani. Kala is represented as the consort of Lord Shiva, on whose body she is often seen standing or dancing. Shiva is the masculine force, the power of peace, while Shakti translates to power, and is considered as the feminine force. In the Vaishnava tradition, these realities are portrayed as Vishnu and Lakshmi, or Radha and Krishna. These are differences in formulation rather than a fundamental difference in the principles. Both Shiva and Shakti have various forms. Shiva has forms like Yogi Raj, Rudra and Nataraja. The 5 mantras, 5 is a sacred number for Shiva. One of his most important mantras has 5 syllables. Shiva's body is said to consist of 5 mantras, called the Paur ± Brahmans. As forms of God, each of these have their own names and distinct iconography: Satyajita, Mahadeva, Agara, Tatpurura to the first pound ha, Azana. These are represented as the 5 faces of Shiva and are associated in various texts with the 5 elements, the 5 senses, the 5 organs of perception, and the 5 organs of action. Doctrinal differences and, possibly, errors in transmission have resulted in some differences between texts in details of how these 5 forms are linked with various attributes. The overall meaning of these associations is summarized by Stella Krimrish. Through these transcendent categories, Shiva, the ultimate reality, becomes the efficient and material cause of all that exists. According to the Paur ± Brahma Upanishad, one should know all things of the phenomenal world is of a 5-fold character, for the reason that the eternal verity of Shiva is of the character of the 5-fold Brahman. Forms and roles. According to Gavin Flood, Shiva is a god of ambiguity and paradox, whose attributes include opposing themes. The ambivalent nature of this deity is apparent in some of his names and the stories told about him. Destroyer and benefactor. In the Age of Veda, 2 contrary sets of attributes for both malignant or terrific and benign or auspicious forms can be found, leading Chakravarti to conclude that all the basic elements which created the complex Rudra Shiva sect of later ages are to be found here. In the Mahabharata, Shiva is depicted as the standard of invincibility, might, and terror, as well as a figure of honor, delight, and brilliance. The duality of Shiva's fearful and auspicious attributes appears in contrasted names. The name Rudra reflects his fearsome aspects. According to traditional etymologies, the Sanskrit name Rudra is derived from the root rud, which means to cry, howl. Stella Krimrish notes a different etymology connected with the adjectival form Rudra, which means wild, of Rudra nature, and translates the name Rudra as the wild one, or the fierce god. R.K. Sharma follows this alternate etymology and translates the name as terrible. Hara is an important name that occurs 3 times in the Anushasana Pavan version of the Shiva Sahasranama, where it is translated in different ways each time it occurs, following a commentatorial tradition of not repeating an interpretation. Sharma translates the 3 as one who captivates, one who consolidates, and one who destroys. Krimrish translates it as the Ravisher. Another of Shiva's fearsome forms is as Kala, time, and as Mahakala, great time, which ultimately destroys all things. Bhairava, terrible, or frightful, is a fierce form associated with immolation. In contrast, the name Shaa to the first kara, beneficent, or conferring happiness reflects his benign form. This name was adopted by the great Vedanta philosopher Shaa to the first kara, who is also known as Shankaracharya. The name Shambhu, causing happiness, also reflects this benign aspect. Ascetic and householder. He is depicted as both an ascetic yogi and as a householder, roles which have been traditionally mutually exclusive in Hindu society. When depicted as a yogi, he may be shown sitting and meditating. His epithet Mahayogi refers to his association with yoga. While Vedic religion was conceived mainly in terms of sacrifice, it was during the epic period that the concepts of tapas, yoga, and asceticism became more important, and the depiction of Shiva as an ascetic sitting in philosophical isolation reflects these later concepts. Shiva is also depicted as a corpse below goddess Kali. It represents that Shiva is a corpse without Shakti. He remains inert, while Shiva is the static form. Mahakali or Shakti is the dynamic aspect without whom Shiva is powerless. As a family man and householder, he has a wife, Parvati, and two sons, Ganesha and Kartikeya. His epithet Umapati refers to this idea, and Sharma notes the two other variants of this name that mean the same thing, Umakanta and Umadeva, also appear in the Sahasranama. Uma in epic literature is known by many names, including the benign Parvati. She is identified with Devi, the Divine Mother. Shakti as well as goddesses like Tripura Sundari, Durga, Kamakshi and Meenakshi. The consorts of Shiva are the source of his creative energy. They represent the dynamic extension of Shiva onto this universe. His son Ganesha is worshipped throughout India and Nepal as the remover of obstacles, Lord of Beginnings and Lord of Obstacles. Kartikeya is worshipped in southern India by the names Subramanya, Subramanian, Shaman, Swaminathan and Murugan, and in northern India by the names Skanda, Kumara, or Kartikeya. Some regional deities are also identified as Shiva's children. As one story goes, Shiva is enticed by the beauty and charm of Mohini, Vishnu's female avatar, and procreates with her. As a result of this union, Shasta, identified with regional deities Ayappa and Ayana, is born. Shiva is also mentioned in some scriptures or folk tales to have had daughters like the serpent goddess Manasa and Ashoka Sundari. Even the demon Antaka is sometimes considered a child of Shiva. Nataraja. The depiction of Shiva as Nataraja is popular. The names Nataka and Nityanata appear in the Shiva Sahasranama. His association with dance and also with music is prominent in the Puranic period. In addition to the specific iconographic form known as Nataraja, various other types of dancing forms are found in all parts of India, with many well-defined varieties in Tamil Nadu in particular. The two most common forms of the dance are the Tandava, which later came to denote the powerful and masculine dance as Kala Mahakala associated with the destruction of the world. When it requires the world or universe to be destroyed, Lord Shiva does it by the tawa to the first Ravana to the first Chya and Laya, which is graceful and delicate and expresses emotions on a gentle level and is considered the feminine dance attributed to the goddess Parvati. Laya is regarded as the female counterpart of Tandava. The Tandava Laya dances are associated with the destruction creation of the world. Dakshinamurti. Dakshinamurti, or Dakata the first Poundier to the first Amarti, literally describes a form of Shiva facing south. This form represents Shiva in his aspect as a teacher of yoga, music, and wisdom and giving exposition on the Shastras. This iconographic form for depicting Shiva in Indian art is mostly from Tamil Nadu. Elements of this motif can include Shiva seated upon a deer throne and surrounded by sages who are receiving his instruction. Ardhanarishvara. An iconographic representation of Shiva called shows him with one half of the body as male and the other half as female. According to Ellen Goldberg, the traditional Sanskrit name for this form is best translated as the Lord who is half woman, not as half man, half woman. According to legend, Lord Shiva is pleased by the difficult austerities performed by the goddess Parvati, grants her the left half of his body. This form of Shiva is quite similar to the yin-yang philosophy of Eastern Asia, though Ardhanarvara appears to be more ancient. Tripurantaka. Shiva is often depicted as an archer in the act of destroying the triple fortresses, Tripura, of the Asuras. Shiva's name Tripurantaka, Ender of Tripura, refers to this important story. In this aspect, Shiva is depicted with 4 arms wielding a bow and arrow, but different from the Pinakapani Murti. He holds an axe and a deer on the upper pair of his arms. In the lower pair of the arms, he holds a bow and an arrow respectively. After destroying Tripura, Tripurantaka Shiva smeared his forehead with 3 strokes of ashes. This has become a prominent symbol of Shiva and is practiced even today by Shaivites. Other forms, avatars, identifications. Shiva, like some other Hindu deities, is said to have several incarnations, known as avatars. Although Puranic scriptures contain occasional references to avatars of Shiva, the idea is not universally accepted in Shaivism. The Linga Purana speaks of 28 forms of Shiva which are sometimes seen as avatars. According to the Svetasvatara Upanishad, he has 4 avatars. In the Hanuman Chalisa, Hanuman is identified as the 11th avatar of Shiva and this belief is universal. Hanuman is popularly known as a Oe Rudrava Oe Rudrava being a name of a Oe Shiva Ramara the Vishnu avatar is considered by some to be the 11th avatar of Rudra. Other traditions regard the sage Devasa, the sage Agastya, the philosopher Adi Shankara, as avatars of Shiva. Other forms of Shiva include Virabhadra and Sharabha. Festivals. Mahashivatri is a festival celebrated every year on the 13th night or the 14th day of the new moon in the Shukla Paksha of the month of Manora or Falguna in the Hindu calendar. This festival is of utmost importance to the devotees of Lord Shiva. Mahashivatri marks the night when Lord Shiva performed the Tandava and it is the day that Lord Shiva was married to Parvati. The holiday is often celebrated with special prayers and rituals offered up to Shiva, notably the Abhishek. This ritual, practiced throughout the night, is often performed every 3 hours with water, milk, yogurt, and honey. Bell leaves are often offered up to the Hindu god, as it is considered necessary for a successful life. The offering of the leaves are considered so important that it is believed that someone who offers them without any intentions will be rewarded greatly. Beyond Hinduism, Buddhism, Shiva is mentioned in Buddhist Tantra. Shiva as Apaya and Shakti as Praja. In cosmologies of Buddhist Tantra, Shiva is depicted as active, skillful, and more passive. Sikhism, the Japajai Sahib of the Guru Granth Sahib says, the Guru's Shiva, the Guru's Vishnu and Brahma. The Guru's Parvati and Lakshmi. In the same chapter, it also says, Shiva speaks, the Siddhas speak. In Dasam Granth, Guru Gobind Singh have mentioned 2 avatars of Rudra, Dattatreya avatar and Parasnath avatar. Others, the worship of Lord Shiva became popular in Central Asia through the Hephthalite dynasty and Kushan Empire. Shaivism was also popular in Sogdiana and eastern Turkestan as found from the wall painting from Penjikent on the rivers of Ashan. In this depiction, Shiva is portrayed with a sacred halo and a sacred thread. He is clad in tiger skin while his attendants are wearing Sojan dress. In eastern Turkestan in the Taklamakan desert, there is a depiction of his 4-legged seated cross-legged in a cushioned seat supported by 2 bulls. Another panel formed Andan Willip shows Shiva in his Trimurti form with his Shakti kneeling on her right thigh. It is also noted that Zoroastrian wind god Valavata took on the iconographic appearance of Shiva. Kirand people, a Mongol tribe from Nepal, worship a form of Shiva as one of their major deity, identifying him as the lord of animals. It is also said that the physical form of Shiva as a yogi is derived from Karants as it is mentioned in Mundam that Shiva took human form as a child of Karant. He is also said to give Karants visions in form of a male deer. In Indonesia, Shiva is also worshipped as Batara Guru. His other name is Sanghyang Jagadnata, and Sanghyang Girinata. In the ancient times, All kingdoms were located on top of mountains. When he was young, before receiving his authority of power, his name was Sanghyang Manikameya. He is first of the children who hatched from the eggs laid by Manuk Patyaraja, wife of god Mulajadi Nabalon. This avatar is also worshipped in Malaysia. Shiva's other form in Indonesian Hindu worship is Maharaja Dewa. Both the forms are closely identified with the sun in local forms of Hinduism or Kabatanan, and even in the genie law of Muslims. Mostly Shiva is worshipped in the form of a lingam or the phallus. References. Sources. External links, lectures on Sava, Shiva legends and sacred tradition of Indian tribes by Kailash Kr. Mishra.